I rise very proud, in particular of the National Party senators who have risen throughout this debate, putting on the record the very real lived experience of those the men and women and those communities that have sent them all to this place.
We understand that we have to adapt. What we don't believe in is hiding the impact of policies on the Australian people.
What we're looking at tonight in this safeguard mechanism is more about deindustrialisation than it is anything about decarbonisation.
Of the 215 facilities penalised, 84% of them are in regional Australia, and 88% are in sectors that are critical to our economic prosperity. I mean, it beggars belief.
Industry is telling the government that this legislation is a direct threat to the jobs and investment that the resources sector provides, jobs and investment that support regional Australia and drive our economic growth.
It is a huge concern that I know I share with many other members in this chamber, that we are being asked to vote on a bill without all the information we need. Without all the information that the Australian public need, and more egregiously, without all the information that the Australian public deserve.
We warned that a Labor government would have the Greens riding resources policy, and as I've described it before, we have the Greens' tail wagging the Labor dog.
You know, if hypocrisy has a colour, it is green. These people sit here and they say that they want to put extra housing and look after housing, but every Greens councillor across Australia votes against every DA. They say they want emissions and power, but they don't want nuclear that will give all the power we want with no emissions.
That's right.
They are not a party of solutions, they are a party of problems. They don't want to solve anything because then they are irrelevant.
You know it.
But Australians must be told the real price of the safeguard mechanism under Labor and the Greens. The real price of investments moving from this country to other jurisdictions. The loss of jobs and the increase in the cost of living.
These are enterprises that support the agriculture, the construction, manufacturing, transport, logistics and resources extraction sectors. Enterprises which together underpin our nation's wealth, which keep our GDP growing, that help pay for our universal healthcare system, our world-class way of life and standard of living, our roads, our defence forces and our public education system.
The Australian people deserve to know the impacts of policy. But in their usual style, the Albanese Labor government is keeping the Australian people in the dark.
It's a nightmare where industry emissions are exported from Australia to higher-emitting countries, where jobs are created in China and India and lost in Australia.
We cannot continue to export our problems. We are so good at that in this country. We have people saying we should not grow rice in this country. Everyone else should grow rice and we'll just buy their rice because we're a dry continent. We're also the most efficient rice-growing continent in the world when it comes to water per tonne. Why are we exporting our problems?
This is a massive hit to those Australians who don't live in the places where there are big buildings.
There was no mention in Mr Bowen's second reading speech of the regions, not one mention, despite 84% of the impact being felt in the regions.
The worst part is Labor can't even provide the evidence that this tax will even have any impact. In a move that shocked absolutely no one, Labor failed to get Treasury to model the impact of its policy before pushing it on Australian industry. In a move that will shock absolutely no one, Labor is trying to tax their way to prosperity.
This list of 215 businesses is not fair and equitable across the country. Guess how many businesses of those 215 are in Sydney? Guess how many? Biggest city in Australia? big amount of carbon emissions, lots of transport, lots of concrete and steel. You know, you tend not to, in a country town, if you want to go and get a good view, you walk up a hill. In the city, you get an elevator made out of steel with a pull-by cable made out of steel and a building made out of concrete. All those carbon emissions embodied in that, and you go up the top of that building to see the town. Those in Sydney, of those 215 businesses, one.
While the United States is supporting CCUS and Britain is also now investing in it, the Albanese government cut funding for carbon capture, usage and storage by $250 million in the October budget. In simple terms, the Albanese government is driving us to try and achieve a renewable nirvana with both hands tied behind our back.
I'm in New South Wales. We've just had a change of government. The new government, one of the first things the new government said was they're going to fast-track the Narrabri gas project. Good. I support that. How's that fit into this bill? How's that fit into the agreement with the Greens, who are saying that you cannot have any new gas projects unless they offset their scope 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You know, let's just continue.
So, for too long, Labor governments have taken our country's industrial might for granted, assuming that it would always be there. But the reality that industrialising will have disastrous consequences for our economy and the way of life. Now, what we're looking at is there are some good ideas. Let's clean up the economy. Let's do these things. Let's clean up some emissions. But the way we're doing it is overkill.
We fervently hope on our side of the chamber that this government's climate policies, of which this bill is a key part, will not destroy the very businesses it seeks to safeguard. We won't be supporting the bill.